This headline in the Daily Telegraph, a right-wing newspaper in the UK with a staunchly pro-Israeli editorial line, made me furious. And it should make you furious as well. The headline is, How the Wheels Came Off Israel's Gaza Invasion. The subheading is, Hamas is resurgent in places the IDF captured months ago. I'll go into this shortly, but just a little summary of where we're at. After over 7.5 months of murderous mayhem, the mass obliteration of most of Gaza, the mass displacement of almost its entire population, the slaughter of tens of thousands of people, many of them children, the maiming of so many, the manufactured famine, well, we really could go on. Israel has lost, catastrophically so. It has not achieved any of its war aims after 7.5 months, whether that be securing the release of Israeli hostages by military means. Israel has killed far more of its own hostages than it has rescued by military means. With the vast majority of hostages released, returned to their loved ones because of ceasefire and prisoner exchanges, that is, swaps with Palestinians, who should be regarded as hostages as well. And crucially, Israel has not defeated Hamas, or anything like it. Now, this is why this is important, just big picture stuff first. If you want a summary of what happens with the great Western military adventures of the 21st century, it goes a bit like this. 1. Politicians and the media loudly line up behind a war. Number 2. Critics of the war are denounced variously as ignorant, naive, morally outrageous, despicable, stooges of the enemy. Number 3. Everything that the critics said would happen, happens, indeed often even more catastrophically than they predicted in the first place. 4. There is no accountability for the war's cheerleaders, either in politics or the media, while those who are vindicated in the worst possible way, because of all the death, the misery, the destruction, remain treated as fringe extremists. And then, of course, the cycle repeats itself again. This is what happened with Afghanistan. This is what happened with Iraq. This is what happened with Libya. And this is what's happening with Gaza. Guys, this has got to stop. It's deranged that we keep having to go through this monstrous, murderous cycle. If we don't break this cycle, then let's be blunt. Huge numbers of people are going to keep on being slaughtered, while violent chaos will be unleashed with consequences that will be felt for many generations. Now, once again, those of us who opposed Israel's onslaught from the very start have to say very loudly, very clearly, and very unapologetically, we were right. Not slightly right, not mostly right, but completely right. Not in the sense of feeling like we won the argument in some public school debating society, but because the authority of those we are up against has to be destroyed for good. As things stand, there are no consequences for these people. They walk away whistling, hands in their pockets, from the crime scene, splattered with blood. Then they demand the same again, more blood with the same outcome. Off they go, whistling, hands in their pockets from the crime, splattered with blood. They cheerfully carry on with their lives, getting lucrative new jobs, making vast sums of money, treated by mainstream media outlets as moderate and respectable, whether that be politicians or commentators. That has to end. Careers need to be destroyed. People need to go to prison. Not because I'm a fan in general of carceral solutions, but we live in societies which lock up the impoverished for selling weed, but not for repeatedly helping to destroy entire societies and slaughter countless innocent people. I'm not saying this because of vengeance. It's about justice. It's a recognition that without accountability, these horrors will keep happening again and again and again. Whereas what happens now is it's the people opposed to the crimes who end up with their careers trashed or indeed criminalised. I mean, let's just have a listen to this astonishing little contribution from a machine politician, former Secretary of State, who quite notoriously lost to Donald Trump. And of course, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton.
I have had many conversations, as you have had, with a lot of young people over the last many months now. And you're right, they don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East, or frankly about history in many areas of the world, including in our own country.
Oh, those silly, ignorant young things. What are they like? Don't know what they're talking about, do they? If only they knew a bit of history, Hillary Clinton. Maybe they should listen to your experience in loudly supporting and voting for the Iraq war. How did that go? How did that go, Secretary of State? War in Libya, how did that go? You were a key driver of that. Or indeed Israel's genocidal onslaught against Gaza. You're a loud cheerleader for that. How's it going? Because looking at the facts here, Hillary Clinton. It seems like those young people who you regard as ill-educated and ill-informed have a much better grip on reality and in thinking through what these horrific wars will mean than you do. Who are you to criticise these protesters? You should be deferring to them. You should be just shutting up and listening to them, along with the likes of Joe Biden and the rest of the political establishment, both Democratic and Republican, who have legitimised and cheered on this monstrosity. Have a bit of respect. Listen to people who know what they're talking about. The protesters, not you. Now, let's just have a look through this Telegraph article, which comes as a complete and utter surprise, which could never have been predicted, except, of course, for those of us who said this would happen from the start. The article notes how the IDF claimed to have completed the dismantling of Hamas's command structure in northern Gaza back at the start of January. That's well over 4 months ago. As the Telegraph said, when they announced that, the troops had good reason to believe their job was done. By job done, the newspaper notes the densely populated neighbourhood of Jabalia had been virtually destroyed, with entire streets and blocks no longer existing, replaced by deep craters caused by Israeli airstrikes and demolition crews. Then what happened? Hamas mounted a resurgence, it says, including firing rockets. So once again, the area is, and I quote, swarming with Israeli troops. The Times of Israel actually had this story with the headline, "In northern Gaza, troops battle Hamas in some of war's most violent fighting yet." This is where they were supposed to have defeated Hamas months ago. It was supposed to be mission accomplished there 4.5 months ago, to be clear. Wait for this paragraph. The Telegraph says it's also symbolic of what Israeli troops says is increasingly becoming a Sisyphean task as they retread already scarred ground in northern Gaza, dealing with resurgent Hamas in the same areas they captured months ago. If you want to know what Sisyphean means, it means denoting or relating to a task that can never be completed. According to Israeli media, Herzl Halevi, the IDF chief of staff, lashed out at Benjamin Netanyahu for refusing a day-after strategy for Gaza, adding, "We are now operating again in Jabalia. As long as there isn't a diplomatic move to develop a governing body in the Strip that isn't Hamas, we'll have to act again and again in other places to dismantle Hamas's infrastructure. It will be a Sisyphean task." There it is again. Sisyphean. Never to be completed. Furthermore, the US Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell, declared Washington doesn't think that a sweeping victory is likely or possible. Oh, now you say it. Now you say it. I don't know, maybe that would have been useful at the start if you thought, it's just some of us, you probably think you're an expert, you're US Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell. Aren't you? Probably thought you were some sort of big guru, knew what's what in foreign policy. Just cheered it all on, didn't you? Gave them the arms, let them do what they want. Months later, not going to work, is it? Oh, well, trial and error. We all make mistakes. I mean, in this particular case, that does mean vast numbers of people being brutally slaughtered, huge numbers being maimed, huge numbers traumatised forever. Gaza reduced to rubble. Famine. Some of the worst atrocities of the 21st century. We live and learn. Oh, well, dust yourself off, Kurt Campbell. On to the next. Israel's Defence Minister Yoav Gallant is quoted in this article as publicly saying Netanyahu has to make tough decisions and come up with a strategy to absolve Israel of the task of occupying Gaza. To be clear what's going on here, there's a tension between the likes of Gallant, who believes occupying Gaza would be a distraction from, say, consolidating eternal rule over the West Bank by Israel, which is their real prize, and that Gaza should just be left some sort of mostly destroyed wasteland, permanently besieged with constant Israeli military raids as and when. Whereas there are those like Netanyahu and his allies who clearly want Gaza permanently under Israeli occupation, with, of course, many members of the Israeli government openly saying that they should resettle Gaza and indeed remove the population of Gaza. Now, under any of these scenarios, life is intolerable for the Palestinian people, and what will happen is mass death and survivors forced out of Gaza. The inevitable consequence, genocidal in every possible scenario. Look, what's clear here is Israel cannot win, in inverted quotes. It has lost. It is clearly lost. It has failed in its military objectives. It has turned Western public opinion decisively against it. That is the states which arm and support Israel and make its oppression of the Palestinian people possible. It has deepened the already huge anger which exists against it in the Arab world and indeed in the global south, which as a consequence of this horror has flexed its muscles and indeed deepened the obvious decline of the global north. Indeed, new polling in the UK by YouGov finds that 55% of the British public support an arms embargo against Israel, with just 13% opposed, while 73% support an immediate ceasefire, with just 8% opposed. Let's be clear, apologists for the Israeli state are fringe extremists. That's where they're at right now. That's how they should be treated. But tragically, they still have huge power in our political and media circles. Well, look, this disgusting farce has to end, this cycle. What legitimacy do these people have? Our media and political elites keep unleashing these hideous, murderous wars which end in catastrophe each and every time. Everything they claim and support is discredited. Everything we say is proven right in the worst possible way, because what we warn about is mass death, destruction, violent chaos, horror. Which is why I say it again. This isn't some sort of, there are debates you have about, I don't know, should we tax the rich more? Should this utility be run by the public or not? We can agree to disagree. This is about mass murder, guys. Which is why I say, careers do have to be ended. People have to end up in prison, because if there isn't accountability, then huge numbers of people are going to be slaughtered over and over again. This nightmare will go on until we make it stop. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do help us take on the Pro War Media, patreon.com/Joseph4. Listen to us on the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.